At my 6-year-old's family visit, my mother-in-law left her alone in a parking lot for 5 hours while she took the other kids fun shopping. She told her, "Wait right here. Don't move." I didn't shout. I walked inside and did this. The whole family went silent. If you've ever had one of those moments where the world tilts and everything goes a little too quiet, that's what happened the day I pulled into my in-laws' parking lot and saw my daughter sitting on the curb by herself. Mia was 6, small, the kind of kid who still mispronounced spaghetti and needed help with zippers. She was perched on the edge of the concrete like a discarded doll, knees pulled to her chest, pink backpack next to her. No shade, no water, no adults. Just her. I parked faster than you're technically supposed to and got out. "Mia?" I called. Her head snapped up. She squinted against the sun, then broke into a shaky smile. "Mom!" She stood too quickly and stumbled. When I got close enough, I could see her cheeks were red, her hair sticking to her forehead. Her little sneakers were gray with dust. I dropped to my knees in front of her. "What are you doing out here alone?" "Grandma said to wait," she said. "Right here." "For how long?" She glanced at the sky like it might give her the answer. I don't know. Since the long hand was on the 12 and the short hand was on the 1. I looked at my phone. It was 6 o'clock. 5 hours. Something hot and ugly rose in my chest. "Have you been out here this whole time?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level and failing a little. She nodded. "I wanted to go inside, but Grandma said, 'Wait right here. Don't move. Your mom will come. We're going shopping.'" My brain processed that in pieces. Shopping. Other kids. I looked around the empty parking lot. No cars besides mine. "Did she lock you out?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "I tried the door," Mia said. "It was locked. So I just waited. I didn't want you to miss me." That sentence actually hurt. I pulled her into a hug. She was warm, too warm. Not sunstroke warm, thankfully, but we were not far off the line where urgent care becomes involved. "Did you have water?" I asked. "No." She shook her head. "But I wasn't supposed to move." Of course she wasn't. My kid takes instructions seriously, especially from adults she still thinks are safe. I took a breath through my nose and stood up. "Okay," I said. "We're going inside." I held her hand and walked to the front door. It was locked, but my in-laws are predictable, and the spare key was still under the world's most obvious fake rock. I let us in. The air conditioning hit us like a slap. Mia shivered. I squeezed her hand. Voices drifted from the kitchen. Laughter. The high, bright sound of other children. The clink of shopping bags. For a second, I froze. I hadn't seen their car in the driveway when I pulled in, which meant they must have come home through the back entrance. They'd walked straight into the house, past the kitchen, past the living room, without so much as checking whether Mia was still outside where they'd left her. They knew she was out there. They just didn't bother calling her in. That realization made my stomach twist. I followed the noise. There they were, my mother-in-law Diane, my father-in-law Ron, my husband's sister Valerie, and her 2 kids, Mason and Chloe. The counters were covered in shopping bags, clothes, toys, a new video game system. Mason was waving a plastic sword. Chloe had a bracelet on each wrist. Diane had a glass of iced tea. She looked very comfortable. I stepped into the doorway with Mia half behind me. The first person to notice us was Chloe. "Oh," she said. "She's back." Diane turned. "Well, there you are," she said. "We were wondering when you'd show up." "Were you?" I said. I kept my tone neutral. It came out slightly colder than neutral. Mia squeezed my hand. "We had so much fun," Valerie said, oblivious. "Took the kids to the mall, let them pick a toy, got ice cream, They were great. How nice, I said. Where was Mia for all that fun? Diane blinked. Outside. In the parking lot, I said. Yes, she said, like this was normal. I told her you'd be here any minute. No sense dragging her around stores when she's just going to whine and cling. She doesn't whine, I said. She's 6. She gets tired. You're too soft on her, Diane said, waving a hand. She needs to toughen up. I stared at her. She's been outside for 5 hours. Diane scoffed. It was not 5 hours. I held up my phone. I dropped her off at 1. It's 6. Ron shrugged. It's not like she was in danger. This is a safe neighborhood. By herself, I said. No bathroom, no water. She could have knocked, Valerie said. The door was locked, Mia whispered from behind me. They all looked at her as if they'd forgotten she had a mouth. I told you to wait right there, Diane said, frowning. If I say stay, you stay. It's not my fault your mother is late. I'm not late, I said. You told me to come around 6. Diane waved that away. Same thing. No, it wasn't. There is a special kind of rage that lives underneath a mother's skin. It's not loud. It's not wild. It's surgical. Precise. Cold. That's what woke up then. I'm taking Mia home, I said. Get her backpack. She hasn't had dinner, Diane said. You're overreacting. Mia's grip on my hand tightened. I could feel how much she wanted to disappear. We'll eat at home, I said. We're leaving. Diane put her glass down sharply. Absolutely not. We are having family dinner. We planned... You, I said quietly, left my 6-year-old alone in a parking lot for hours. She's fine, Ron said. Look at her. Nothing happened. There are adults who wouldn't leave their car unattended that long, I said. You left a child. Diane rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. Valerie added, You always are. I didn't shout. I've learned that shouting gives people something to grab onto. Look how emotional she is. See? She's irrational. They stop talking about what they did and start talking about how you reacted. So I didn't shout. I let go of Mia's hand long enough to pull out my phone. I opened the family group chat, snapped a picture of my daughter's scuffed shoes and flushed cheeks, and typed, Just picked Mia up from your parking lot. She's been outside alone since 1 p.m. We won't be doing unsupervised visits again. Send. Diane's phone pinged on the counter. So did Valerie's, Ron's. They looked down, then up. The room went very, very quiet. This isn't over, Diane said. For once, I said. You're right. I picked up Mia's backpack, took her hand, and walked out. Nobody tried to stop us. That was the moment something shifted. Not just in me. Once my husband found out, in him too. I didn't know all of it yet, but I knew one thing. I was done pretending this was just how family is. On paper, my husband Lucas came from a close family. That's how he used to phrase it when we were dating. Close. The kind of close that meant weekly dinners, constant group texts, and a mother who always had an opinion ready before anyone asked for one. I thought I knew what that meant. I didn't. By the time we had Mia, now 6, I knew what intense meant in practice. It meant every conversation with his parents started with his sister Valerie, circled around Valerie, and ended with Valerie's kids, Mason and Chloe, who apparently could do no wrong in that household. My daughter was sweet, nice, no trouble, which in Diane's vocabulary translated to keep quiet and don't ask for anything. Diane loved being the heroic grandmother, the one who took the kids so you two can have a break, the one who raised you right, and now I'm helping with the next generation. What this looked like in reality was that she watched Mason and Chloe constantly, did their school pickups, their sports drop-offs, their everything. Valerie paid her a small amount sometimes. Mostly she didn't. It was family. When Mia was born, Diane offered to help with her too. Help was a generous word for what it turned into. There was always a string. I watched her on Tuesday, so you can run an errand for me this weekend, right? I took her to the park, so you don't mind sending a little something extra for groceries? I bought her a coat, so I used your card. Hope that's okay. Little leaks in the dam. Lucas had grown up being told it was his job to help. He was the reliable one, the responsible son. So when his mom hinted about money, he transferred it. When his dad mentioned being behind on bills, he picked up more shifts and paid them. When Diane sighed about how hard it was to keep the house up while also caring for Mason and Chloe full-time, he quietly set up a monthly transfer. He showed me the first one. "Just for now," he said, "until they catch up." 7 years later, it was still going. Every month, a bigger chunk of our budget than I like to think about went to his parents' account. On top of that, there were the little emergencies. They always had one. New tires, dentist, electric bill. Valerie's unexpected expense that somehow landed in Lucas's lap. He never pushed back. Not really. When I tried to talk about it, he would tense up and say, "They need it. They helped us. It's just money." I stopped bringing it up as much. I didn't want to be the villain in a story where his parents were always the martyrs. But the thing about patterns is that they don't just stay emotional. Sooner or later, they get dangerous. With Mia, it started smaller. They'd keep her up too late because the cousins wanted to play. They'd forget to put sunscreen on her because she needs color. They let her stand at the edge of a pool while they talked, back turned, until she slipped on the wet tile and almost went in. Every time I said something, I was overprotective. Anxious. "Helicopter." "Nothing happened," Diane would say. "She's fine." Nothing happened. Until the day they made sure something could. When Diane announced in the family chat that she was taking all the grandkids for a fun day, I didn't immediately panic. She'd done outings before. It was supposed to be simple. I'd drop Mia off at 1, pick her up around 6. "We'll just be home, maybe run an errand or 2, Diane had said. She did not mention the 5-hour curbside abandonment plan. If she had, I might have rearranged my schedule. But that's the thing, isn't it? People like Diane never say, "I plan to do something reckless," and then blame you if your child survives. They just do it, then call it parenting style. Driving home after I picked Mia up, listening to my daughter describe how she watched the shadows move across the parking lot, how hot the ground got under her shoes, how she counted cars to pass the time, I felt something else settle in my chest. I had been raised to believe you don't blow up families unless you absolutely have to. They convinced me for years that this didn't qualify. But looking at Mia's sunburned nose, her exhausted eyes, her trust in me not to leave her alone again, I realized something very simple. They had crossed a line I didn't even know I had until they were standing on the other side of it waving, and this time I wasn't going to be the one reaching back. The thing nobody tells you about big family explosions is that the real blast comes later. The driveway scene, the group chat, the doorway standoff. That was just the match. The real fire was what happened after we got home and the adrenaline wore off. Mia wouldn't let go of me that night. She followed me from room to room like a quiet little shadow. If I went to the kitchen, she stood in the doorway. If I went to the bathroom, she waited outside. If I sat on the couch, she climbed into my lap, even though she hadn't done that in months. "Are you okay, Bug?" I asked at bedtime. She nodded, which would have been more convincing if she hadn't been gripping my sleeve like it was a life raft. "Do you want your nightlight?" I tried. "Yes," she whispered. Then, after a pause, "Can you stay?" "I'll sit here for a while," I said, settling into the chair by her bed. She lay on her side, eyes open. "Mom?" "Yeah?" "You're not going to leave me here and go shopping, right?" It hit like a punch. "No," I said. "I will never leave you like that." She thought about it. "Even if Grandma says I have to wait?" "Even then." She nodded slowly. "I thought, if I moved, you wouldn't find me." I swallowed hard. "You did everything right," I said. "You stayed where you were told. None of this is your fault." She blinked, and I watched one tear slide sideways into her hair. I didn't stay for a while. I stayed until she finally drifted off, and even then I sat there longer, listening to her breathing, wondering how long it would take before she didn't flinch every time a car slowed outside the house. I found Lucas in the living room, sitting on the edge of the coffee table with his elbows on his knees, staring at nothing. "How is she?" he asked. "She keeps asking if I'm coming back," I said. "To the room, the house, anywhere." She tracked me from the couch to the sink like I was a balloon she was afraid would float away. He closed his eyes. "I told her Grandma said, 'Don't move,' and she heard, 'Don't exist unless your mother can find you,'" I added. "That's not what Mom—" "Maybe not," I said. "But that's what happened." He didn't argue. We sat in silence for a moment. "You know," I said, "if we let this slide, we're not just telling your parents it was fine. We're telling Mia it wasn't a big deal." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I know." "She stood in a driveway for 5 hours because she trusted that if she moved, she'd get in trouble," I said. "I'm not willing to teach her that the people who did that get another chance." He looked over at me. The Lucas I married was there, but there was something else now too. Something heavier, sharper. "I'm cutting them off," he said. I didn't say anything. I'd wanted this for a long time, but it had to be his line to draw. He stood, went to his desk, and opened his laptop. I watched as he logged into the bank account he'd grown up thinking was a moral obligation. $600 a month, he said, almost to himself. "That's what I've been sending them. For bills." He clicked. "Another $200 into the extra account Mom pulls from," he added. "For groceries with the grandkids." More clicks. "And then there's the emergency fund," he said. "The one that's mysteriously always empty." He opened another tab. The numbers popped up. Transfers to his parents every few weeks. $250, $300, $400. The amounts varied, but the pattern was the same. "How much is that?" I asked. He did a quick mental calculation. "Around $800 to $1,000 a month, on average." "And that's just what you know about," I said. He clicked again. "Not anymore," he said. One by one, he canceled the $600 recurring transfer, deleted the $200 extra, closed the emergency fund pipe. He removed their access to the card they'd borrowed and never returned. The confirmation messages popped up politely, as if he were unsubscribing from a newsletter. "That's it," he said, leaning back. "That's a lot of money," I said. He nodded. "We could have gone on vacation every year." "Instead," I said, "we bought them the privilege of endangering our kid." His mouth twisted. "Not anymore." "And contact?" I asked. He picked up his phone. "I'm not writing a speech," he said. "They don't listen to speeches." He opened the family thread and typed. "You left Mia alone outside for hours. There will be no more visits. Don't contact us again." He hit send. Put the phone face down on the table. "That's it?" I asked. "That's it," he said. It took 6 minutes for his parents to notice. The phone buzzed with incoming messages. "What is this call me now? You're overreacting. We did nothing wrong." Answer the phone. He didn't. I didn't. We sat in a strange, fragile silence while Mia slept in the other room. Then a new text popped up from his mother. If you want us to stay out of your lives, you will keep sending the money. If you cut that off and start telling your little parking lot story, we will tell everyone what really happened. It's your word against ours. You can't prove anything. I stared at it. There it was. Not even subtle. Wow, I said. They're not even pretending this isn't about money. Lucas read the message twice. His jaw tightened. They think we're scared to make this official, he said. Are we? I asked. He looked at me. No, he said. We're not. The next morning, while Mia sat curled on the couch watching cartoons without really watching them, Lucas looked at me and said, We're reporting it. We didn't need to discuss it. We just drove. The police station smelled like old coffee. A woman at the front desk glanced up as we walked in. I need to file a child endangerment report, I said. Her expression sharpened. What happened? I pulled out my phone and showed her the photo. The curb, the empty driveway, the heat on Mia's face. She was outside for 5 hours, I said. Completely alone. My in-laws took the other kids shopping and left her with no way in. The woman's jaw tightened. This way. In a small interview room, Mia clung to me, so she sat on my lap. There was no way she would have stayed home alone after yesterday. The officer asked only what mattered. Was she supervised at any point? No. Did anyone check on her? No. Where were the caregivers? At the mall. Did she have a way to get inside? No, the doors were locked. The officer looked at the photo, then at Mia, then at us. This is serious, she said. She took the report quickly, timeline, photo, statements, and slid a case number across the table. Before we left, she crouched beside Mia. You did nothing wrong. You were very brave. Mia leaned into me without speaking. We walked out holding the case number, cold, official, undeniable. It didn't fix what happened, but it made sure no one could pretend it wasn't real. At home, I opened the extended family chat, the same one where Diane had called me dramatic 2 days earlier. I typed, For those who still aren't sure what happened, Mia was left outside alone from about 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. at my in-laws' place. The door was locked. No water. No supervision. We have filed a report with local police, so there is a record of what happened. We will not be discussing it further. I attached the curb photo again and hit send. Lucas watched over my shoulder, then added his own message beneath mine. Any questions? Ask me directly. Do not go through my mother. Then we put our phones down. It took about 30 seconds. Cousin. Wow. I didn't realize it was 5 hours. Aunt. That's not old school parenting. That's dangerous. Another cousin. I thought this was being exaggerated. I don't anymore. Diane jumped in. How dare you send this to everyone? You are trying to destroy us. You went to the police? Over family? Ron followed. You're making us look like monsters. Someone else replied before we could. No one made you do that. You did that yourselves. I didn't recognize the name. Some second cousin who'd been quiet up to that point. Diane tried again. This is a lie. She was only outside at a little while Lucas responded. Mom, stop. We both know that's not true. She went quiet after that in the chat. She did not go quiet in real life. The doorbell rang that evening just as we were clearing the dinner dishes. Lucas and I looked at each other. We didn't have to say it. He opened the door just enough to block the entry. There they were again. Diane and Ron. No Valerie this time. Just the original disaster duo. You called the police on us, Diane said. No hello. Yes, Lucas said. Ron glared. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes, Lucas repeated. You are trying to ruin our lives. Diane hissed. "We could lose everything." "You almost lost my daughter," he said. "I guess now we're even." "You ungrateful little—" she started. I stepped up beside him. "You asked us to keep paying you to stay away," I said. "Remember that part? Keep sending the money if you want no contact. You tried to sell us your silence." Diane's face went blotchy. "That was not—" "You literally wrote it," I said. "I have the text." Ron jabbed a finger toward Lucas. "We did everything for you. We raised you. We helped you. We watched your child. You left her alone on concrete for 5 hours," Lucas snapped. "You watched nothing." He took a breath, steadied himself. "You're not coming near her again," he said. "There will be no more visits, no more calls, no more money." "You can't do this," Diane said. "We'll tell everyone you made this up. You're turning them against us." "You're doing a great job of that on your own," I said. She swung her glare to me. You did this! You poisoned him!" I met her eyes. "I didn't poison him," I said. "I just stopped diluting the truth." Her mouth opened and closed. "You're going to regret reporting us," Ron said. "This will follow us everywhere." "Good," I said. "Maybe then you'll take it seriously." "We should call our lawyer," Diane muttered. "We'll get grandparents' rights. A judge will make you—" "If you try that," Lucas said quietly, "every word of what you did goes on record, with dates, times, pictures, and police reports." They stared at him like he'd grown a spine in front of them, and they hadn't received a memo. "You think no one will believe us?" he asked. "Try us." For a moment, no one moved. Then Ron tugged Diane's arm. "We're not getting anywhere," he muttered. She yanked it back, but the fight was gone from her eyes. For the first time, she looked less outraged and more scared. Not for Mia, for herself. "You're choosing her over us," she said one more time, like repetition might make it less true. Lucas didn't hesitate. "I'm choosing my daughter," he said. "And myself." He closed the door. We waited. No pounding, no shouting. Just the muffled sound of their voices retreating down the walk and the car doors closing. I hadn't realized how loud they'd been in my head until they were gone. Later that night, as I tucked Mia in, she asked, almost casually, "Is Grandma coming back?" "No," I said. "She's not allowed to take care of you anymore." Mia thought about that. "Because she left me?" "Yes," I said. "Because she left you?" She nodded, small but sure. "Good," she said. I didn't like waiting. I brushed her hair back from her face. "You won't have to again," I said. She believed me. I decided to make sure I earned that. So that's where we ended up. They lost their money, their access, their version of the story. We lost the illusion that family meant what they said it did. Mia still asks sometimes if I'll come back when I run to the store. I always tell her yes, and then I do. Every time. That's how you fix what other people break. Not with speeches, but with follow-through. Lucas is lighter now. He laughs more. He doesn't flinch when his phone buzzes, because those numbers are blocked. As for Diane and Ron, they tell anyone who will listen that we went too far. Maybe we did. So, what do you think? Did we go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.
Alright, quick hello. This is an original Tales First story about a family crossing a line and learning their consequences. Let's begin.
"I don't care about the child," my mother-in-law said about my 9-year-old daughter. My husband agreed. "My wife is not so smart. She will sign what we need." 7 days later, their lawyer called me in a panic because what I signed was It was the Tuesday 2 weeks before Christmas in Chicago, and my daughter Sophie was still wearing her school uniform when Linda decided to say it out loud. We were in my kitchen, while the oven preheated and Sophie tried to tape a paper snowflake to the sliding door. Linda stood by the island like she owned the place, holding a mug she didn't ask for. Tyler leaned against the fridge with that "everybody relax" face he saved for when his mother was about to get mean. Linda nodded toward Sophie without even lowering her voice. "I don't care about the child." Sophie's hand stopped. The tape drooped. She didn't cry. She just blinked, like she was trying to translate what she'd heard into something less sharp. Tyler didn't correct her. He didn't even look at Sophie. He looked at me. Then Linda slid a manila folder across my counter like it was a dessert menu. "This needs to be signed tonight." Tyler finally spoke. "Emily, just sign it. You don't need to read all that." That was the moment I realized they weren't talking to me like a partner. They were talking to me like an obstacle. And that's when I decided I would sign. Just not what they thought. The first rule in my house used to be simple. Sophie comes first. I said it early, I said it calmly, I said it like it was as normal as taking your shoes off at the door. 2 months after I married Tyler, we hosted a small Sunday dinner. Linda arrived 40 minutes early, let herself in with the spare key Tyler forgot to tell me he'd given her, and started rearranging my living room candles. Sophie came down in leggings and a sweatshirt, hair still damp from her shower, and Linda made a sound like she'd tasted something sour. "Is she going to dress like that?" Linda asked Tyler, not me. Tyler smiled too fast. "Mom, it's fine." Linda's eyes slid to Sophie. "Honey, some people don't teach their kids standards. You'll learn." Sophie didn't answer. She just went back upstairs. I followed her, knocked on her door, and found her folding a blanket over her knees like she was building a shield. "She doesn't get to talk to you like that," I said, quiet and exact. Sophie shrugged, trying to look older than 9. "It's okay. She likes you more." That sentence landed in my chest and stayed there. I went downstairs and told Tyler, "We're not doing comments about Sophie's clothes." Tyler kissed my cheek, as if affection could substitute for agreement. "I'll handle it." He didn't handle it. He just smoothed it. And Linda learned that if she pushed, he would cushion the impact for her. 2 weeks later, the next rule appeared, disguised as a favor. We were at a craft store, Sophie and I picking out glittery ornaments for a school project, when Tyler's phone buzzed. He stepped aside and came back with that careful voice. "My mom wants to help with Christmas shopping for Sophie." I smiled because I wanted peace. "That's sweet," he added. "She wants to be the one to take Sophie." Just them. Sophie's face tightened like she'd just swallowed a dry cracker. "Do I have to?" Tyler laughed lightly. "No one's forcing you." But then he looked at me. Not Sophie. Me. Like this was my job to manage. So I said, "We can all go together." Tyler's smile flickered. "Mom said it would be easier without extra opinions." I stared at him. "Without me?" He raised both hands. "Babe, it's just shopping. Let her feel included." I watched Sophie stare at the floor tiles, counting invisible squares. "We're not doing one-on-one outings," I said. "Not yet." Tyler's jaw tightened. "Why are you making this a thing?" And just like that, the rule in my house wasn't a rule anymore. It was negotiable. The third scene happened in my driveway, in the dark, when the air smelled like snow and exhaust. Tyler had volunteered to pick Sophie up from school because I had a late meeting. I came home to find Sophie sitting on the front steps with her backpack still on, cheeks pink from the cold. "What happened?" I asked, unlocking the door. Sophie stood up too fast. "It's fine." Inside, Tyler was on the couch, shoes on, scrolling. "Hey," he said, like it was a normal Tuesday. I set my bag down. Why was she outside? Tyler didn't look up. She didn't want to come in. Sophie's voice was small. He was on the phone with Grandma. Tyler sighed, finally setting his phone down. Mom just asked how things were going. Sophie got sensitive. I turned to Sophie. What did she say? Sophie's eyes went shiny, but she forced the words out. She said I'm lucky you married Tyler because now I have a real family and I shouldn't mess it up. Tyler rolled his eyes like a teenager. That's not what she meant. I felt my face stay calm while everything inside me went tight. You let her say that to Sophie. Tyler leaned forward, elbows on knees. Emily, my mom is old school. She's not trying to hurt her. Sophie whispered. It did hurt. Tyler looked at Sophie for half a second, then back to me. You see? This is why I didn't want you to make rules. It makes everyone tense. I stood there, keys still in my hand, realizing that Tyler had found a way to make harm sound like my overreaction. That night, after Sophie went to bed, I asked Tyler, Did you ever tell your mom to stop? He reached for me like a peace offering. Don't start. It's Christmas season. And I swallowed it because I didn't want Sophie to see another rupture. Not after losing her dad. Tyler knew that. Linda knew that. They both used it. The fourth scene was quieter, which made it worse. We were at Linda's house for a cookie day, and she set Sophie up at the dining table with sprinkles and frosting and 2 bright overhead lights. Then she handed Tyler her phone and said, Show her. Tyler cleared his throat. My mom found a great financial advisor. He does family planning. I blinked. Okay. Linda smiled like a teacher about to assign homework. It's important. Tyler told me you inherited something after your first husband passed. You should protect the family. My mouth went dry. That's not a dinner conversation. Linda waved a hand. Oh, please. I know there's money set aside. Don't pretend there isn't. Sophie looked up, frosting on her fingertip, confused. Tyler said softly, Babe, it's not a big deal. Mom just wants us to be smart. Linda leaned in. And to be clear, any money you got because of your situation should benefit your current household, not just your child. Sophie's shoulders hunched as if she could make herself smaller. I said, Sophie's father's assets are for Sophie. Linda smiled without warmth. We'll see. On the drive home, Tyler kept his voice gentle like that made it okay. Mom's just worried. She thinks you're being rigid. She called Sophie just your child, I said. Tyler exhaled like I was exhausting. Emily, you take everything personally. I stared out at the wet streets, the Christmas lights blurring. It's not personal. It's my kid. Tyler nodded, but it wasn't agreement. It was patience. The kind you use on someone you think you can outlast. By the time 2 weeks before Christmas rolled around, I had learned the pattern. Linda controlled through help. Tyler controlled through calm. Sophie absorbed everything like a sponge, then tried to wring herself out in private. And then, on that Tuesday, Linda brought the folder. The folder looked official. Tabs, sticky notes, a cover page with a law firm header. Linda placed it on my counter as if she was placing a burden. Tyler stood behind her shoulder, not quite touching her, but close enough that I could see where his loyalty lived. What is this? I asked. Linda's smile was thin. Just some paperwork, a power of attorney, and a few updates to your accounts. My accounts, I repeated. Tyler's voice slid in, smooth. It's routine. If anything happens to you, I need to be able to handle things. I kept my tone even. If something happens to me, Sophie's guardian is already designated. Linda's eyes narrowed. We're not talking about custody. Don't be dramatic. We're talking about money. Sophie was at the table with markers, making a card for her teacher. She paused, listening. Tyler leaned closer to me, like he was sharing a secret. We're behind on a couple things. This will help us consolidate. Mom knows a guy. I stared at him. Behind on what things? He didn't answer. He just said, not in front of Sophie. Linda lifted her chin. She doesn't need to be involved. Sophie's marker squeaked across paper, then stopped. I asked Linda, why are you here with this? Linda's smile widened, almost proud. Because Tyler said you're not the smartest with paperwork. He said you'll sign what you need to sign if we present it properly. Tyler didn't flinch. He didn't deny it. He just said, Mom, don't say it like that. Linda shrugged. It's true. She'll sign what we need. Sophie's chair scraped back. She stood, quiet, and walked upstairs without a word. My hands stayed on the counter. Tyler, I said, did you tell her that? Tyler's eyes flicked toward the stairs, then back to me. Emily, you're making it sound evil. We're a family. Linda tapped the folder. Sign tonight. We need it before the holidays. I looked at the signature tabs, yellow flags that screamed urgency. Then I looked at Tyler, who wouldn't meet my eyes for more than a second. I nodded once. Okay. Linda's shoulders relaxed like she'd won something. And that was the moment I stopped arguing out loud and started planning in silence. I didn't sign the folder that night. I made dinner. I asked Sophie about her spelling quiz. I packed her lunch. I kissed her forehead and watched her eyes search mine like she was trying to confirm reality. After she fell asleep, Tyler tried again. He brought the folder into the bedroom and set it on the dresser like a gift. Let's just get it done, he said. I sat on the edge of the bed and folded my hands. Tell me what you're behind on. Tyler rubbed his jaw. It's complicated. Say it anyway. He exhaled. Credit cards, some personal loans, and I took out a loan to cover Mom's roof. I stared. You borrowed money for your mom's roof? Tyler's face tightened. She needed help. And you didn't tell me. He said it like a complaint. You would have freaked out. I kept my voice flat. So your solution is to have me sign a power of attorney over my assets. Tyler leaned forward, softer, like he was trying to soothe a toddler. Babe, it's not like that. It's just for convenience. Convenience for who? He glanced away. For us. I reached for the folder and flipped the first page. Dense paragraphs, legal language, and at the bottom, my name printed next to a line. I read the title twice. Durable Power of Attorney. I looked up. This gives you authority to act on my behalf. Tyler shrugged. Only if you're unavailable. And how do they define unavailable? I asked. Tyler's mouth opened, then closed. It's standard. I flipped to the next tab. A section about financial accounts. Another about real property. Another about trusts. My spine went cold. Why is there a trust section? Tyler's eyes sharpened. Because you have one. I held his gaze. Sophie has one. Tyler's voice dropped. Emily, we're married. It affects our household. I felt my hands stay steady, even as my stomach turned. Sophie's trust is not household money. Tyler's nostrils flared. You're acting like I'm a stranger. I said, right now, you are. He looked at the folder, then at me, then said the sentence that made the air change. My mom is right. You're not that smart with this stuff. That's why we're helping. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was casual. And that casualness is what made it dangerous. The next morning, the first humiliation happened, small enough that Tyler could pretend it didn't count. Sophie and I were in the car, windshield wipers slapping at sleet, when Tyler called. I put him on speaker because Sophie liked hearing his voice when he was being normal. He didn't say hello to Sophie. He said, "Emily, I told my mom you'd sign today." Sophie stared out the window, jaw tight. I said, "I'm taking Sophie to school." Tyler's tone sharpened. "You always have an excuse." Sophie's voice came out, careful. "Mom doesn't have excuses. She has stuff." Tyler paused, then laughed like it was cute. "See? She's learning manipulation from you." Sophie's cheeks flushed. She whispered, I cut in, calm. "Don't talk to her like that." Tyler sighed. "Put the kid away from the phone. This is adult business." Sophie's eyes widened, and she reached to turn the volume down herself, like she wanted to disappear from the conversation. I said, "We'll talk later," and hung up. That was humiliation number 1, reducing Sophie to the kid, like her existence was noise. The second one came that afternoon, more direct. I picked Sophie up from school and found Tyler already home, sitting at the kitchen table with Linda. They'd let themselves in again. Linda had brought her own pen. Sophie stopped in the doorway. Linda looked up and smiled too big. "There she is." Sophie didn't move. Tyler said, "Hey, Soph, go upstairs. We're doing paperwork." Sophie's voice was quiet but firm. "I don't want Grandma here." Linda's smile vanished. "Excuse me?" Sophie's hands clenched around her backpack straps. "You said you don't care about me." The kitchen went still. Linda's eyes snapped to me like it was my fault Sophie had ears. Tyler stood abruptly. "Sophie, that's enough. You don't speak to my mother that way." Sophie's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. "I didn't speak to her. I repeated her." Tyler's face darkened. "Upstairs. Now." Sophie looked at me like she was waiting for me to choose her out loud. I said, "Sophie, go wash your hands and start your homework. I'll be up in a minute." Her lips pressed together. She nodded once and walked away slowly, each step heavy. Linda leaned toward Tyler and didn't lower her voice. "See? She's disrespectful. That child is a problem." Tyler didn't correct her. He just looked at me and said, "Sign. Let's not drag this out." That was humiliation number 2. Tyler defending Linda against Sophie's truth. Then came the third one. The main violation, wrapped in the same fake calm. Linda opened the folder to a page I hadn't seen yet. "Here," she said, sliding it toward me. "This one gives Tyler the authority to manage the trust and any distributions." My voice stayed steady. "No!" Linda's expression hardened. "Emily, don't be stupid. The trust is money sitting there doing nothing. Tyler can invest it." "It's Sophie's," I said. Linda's eyes were flat. "I already told you. I don't care about the child. I care about family stability." Tyler nodded like that made sense. "We need it. I need it." I stared at him. "For what?" He swallowed, then said it quickly. "We're trying to buy a bigger house. And I promised Mom I'd help her with her mortgage refinancing. And there's something else." I felt my pulse stay strangely slow. "Something else." Tyler's eyes flicked to Linda, then away. "Just sign." Linda leaned in, voice sharp. "Your first husband is dead. That money isn't doing him any good." My skin went cold. "Don't say his name like that." Linda shrugged. "Truth is truth." Tyler's voice rose just a little. "Emily, you're being emotional." I looked at the page again. It wasn't just a power of attorney. It was a reshuffling of authority, a way to step around the protections my late husband and I had put in place. They weren't asking me to sign paperwork. They were asking me to hand my daughter's future to people who openly didn't care if she got hurt. I slid the folder back. I'm not signing today. Tyler's face tightened. Yes, you are. I stood. No, I'm not. Linda's eyes flashed. Then you'll regret it. Tyler stepped closer to me and lowered his voice like a threat disguised as a promise. My wife is not so smart. She will sign what we need. He said it like he was quoting himself, like he was proud. I looked at him, then at Linda, then toward the stairs where Sophie's footsteps had stopped. She was probably listening. I nodded once, slow. Okay. Tyler exhaled, relieved, and Linda's shoulders relaxed again. I walked out of the kitchen, went upstairs, and sat on the edge of Sophie's bed. She was doing math problems with shaky pencil lines. She didn't look up. Are you going to sign? I kept my voice soft. I'm going to handle it. Sophie's eyes lifted to mine, searching. Will I be okay? I put my hand over hers, steady. Yes. Then I stood, went to my closet, and pulled out the binder I kept hidden behind winter scarves, the one with Sophie's trust documents, the one Tyler didn't know I updated last year. I didn't feel angry. I felt clear, and I became very calm and very final. On Thursday morning, I didn't argue. I didn't confront. I didn't announce boundaries like a speech. I packed Sophie's lunch, braided her hair, and drove her to school like everything was normal. The sky was the color of old paper, and the radio played Christmas songs I didn't listen to. At drop-off, Sophie held my hand longer than usual. Are you mad? She asked. No, I said. I'm focused. She nodded like she understood the difference. After I watched her walk into the building, I didn't go home. I drove downtown, parked in a garage that smelled like wet concrete, and walked into a law office with a brass plaque that read Estate Planning. The receptionist smiled. Can I help you? I said, I need to see an attorney about a minor's trust and attempted financial coercion. She didn't ask me to explain in the lobby. She just nodded and handed me paperwork. Within 20 minutes, I was sitting across from a woman named Marisol, who wore glasses on a chain and had the kind of calm that made you feel safer just by proximity. She flipped through the documents I'd brought, her fingers quick and precise. You're the trustee, she said, tapping a page. And the trust has language limiting distributions to Sophie's benefit, which is good. I nodded. My husband and his mother are trying to get me to sign a power of attorney that would let him access it. Marisol's eyebrows lifted. He can't access it without your cooperation, unless you sign something that grants authority. I know, I said. That's why I'm here. I want to lock it down further. Marisol leaned back. We can add additional protections. We can formalize that no power of attorney can override trustee authority without court approval. We can place the assets in a structure that requires judicial review for any changes. I exhaled. Do it! She slid a new set of documents toward me, explained each page with short sentences, and asked me questions that mattered. Sophie's age, my late husband's intentions, any previous amendments. I answered like a person reading a grocery list, because staying calm was my only luxury. Marisol pointed to signature lines. These filings reinforce Sophie's protected interest. If someone tries to present a power of attorney, it won't grant access to this trust. And if they try something else, it creates a record. I'm also sending a formal notice to the firm listed on that packet and to the trust's custodian. So any attempt to use those packet documents against the trust gets flagged immediately. I picked up the pen. I signed. Not Linda's folder. Not Tyler's plan. I signed what made my daughter untouchable. When I walked out, my phone buzzed 3 times. Tyler. I didn't answer. I drove to Sophie's school, checked her out early, and took her to a small diner with red booths and a sticky tabletop. She ate fries like she hadn't eaten in days. Are we in trouble? She asked, ketchup on her lip. No, I said. We're setting rules that actually work. She looked relieved, then worried again. Is Tyler mad? I don't know, I said. But his feelings aren't the priority. Sophie nodded slowly, like she was practicing the idea. When we got home, Tyler's car was in the driveway. Linda's was behind it. I walked Sophie inside, hung her coat, and said softly, "Go upstairs and change into something comfy. If you hear voices, you stay in your room. Okay?" Sophie's eyes widened. Okay. Then I walked into the kitchen and found Tyler and Linda sitting at my table again. My table. With the folder open like a weapon. Tyler stood up. "Where were you?" I set my purse down carefully. "Out." Linda's eyes narrowed. "Did you sign?" I smiled a little. Not warm, just controlled. "I signed." Tyler's shoulders loosened. "Good." Linda pushed the folder toward me. "Then sign these too." I didn't touch it. Tyler frowned. "What do you mean you signed?" I met his eyes. "I mean, I handled Sophie's trust." Linda's face went still. "What did you do?" I didn't explain. I didn't need to. Tyler stepped closer, voice rising. "Emily, you can't just make legal changes without even telling me." I tilted my head. "Watch me." That's when Tyler made his first real move. Not heroic, not brave, but real. He looked at Linda and said, "Mom, maybe you should go." Linda whipped her head toward him. "Excuse me?" Tyler's voice was shaky. "Just go home. For now." Linda stood so fast her chair scraped. "You're choosing her over your own mother." Tyler didn't answer. His jaw clenched, and he looked at the floor like a man realizing he'd been trained. Linda grabbed her purse. "Fine, but don't expect me to help you when this blows up." She walked out, slamming the door hard enough that the Christmas cards on the counter shifted. Tyler turned to me, breath tight. "What did you do?" I picked up my phone, opened my email, and showed him the confirmation from Marisol's office. Nothing detailed, just enough to prove action. Tyler's face went pale. "You locked it." I nodded. "Yes." He swallowed. "My mom is going to freak out." I said, "Let her." Tyler stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You're going to ruin Christmas." I didn't raise my voice. "You already did." Upstairs, the floor creaked. Sophie had shifted in her room. I looked at Tyler, still calm. "We'll talk, but not with your mother here, and not while you're still pretending this was help." 7 days later, I was rinsing a mug at the sink when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Hello?" A man's voice came through, fast and clipped. "Is this Emily?" "Yes." "I'm an attorney with the firm listed on that power of attorney packet. I need to speak with Tyler immediately. There's a serious problem with those documents." Tyler's head snapped up, confused. I held the phone out. He took it. "Yes," he said, voice tight. "This is Tyler." A pause. His face changed again. Confused, then worried, then scared. He swallowed hard. "What do you mean, lawyer?" And I knew the dominoes had started falling. Tyler listened for less than a minute, then pulled the phone away from his ear and stared at it like it had insulted him. He ended the call. That was some attorney." I leaned against the counter. "From where?" Tyler's voice was strained. "From the firm on Mom's paperwork." I nodded once. "Okay." Tyler looked at me, eyes wide. He said they received notice. Something about the trust being protected and any POA being invalid for it. He sounded rattled, like he was trying not to panic. I didn't react. I just said, "He should." Tyler's hands started to shake. Then he shoved them into his pockets like he could hide the truth in fabric. Emily, why would they call me? Because someone tried to do something that triggered a legal response, I said. And they were sloppy. Tyler's face flushed. My mom wouldn't, I cut in, still calm. Your mom brought papers to my house, told me she didn't care about Sophie, and asked me to sign control away. Whatever she wouldn't do, she already did. He opened his mouth, closed it. Then his phone rang again. He answered with a forced calm that didn't match his eyes. Hello? This time I heard the other voice faintly through the speaker, fast, clipped, professional. Tyler's shoulders slumped. Yes, I understand. He looked at me like he wanted me to fix it for him. I didn't. He said into the phone, No, I did not tell my mother to forge anything. His eyes snapped to mine. Forge. The word hit the air like a dropped plate. He went quiet, listened, then said, Okay. I'll tell her. He hung up and stared at the floor. They think someone tried to falsify a signature on one of the forms tied to that packet, he whispered. I blinked slowly. On what? Tyler's throat bobbed. On a beneficiary change. Or a distribution request. I don't know. He wouldn't say much. Just that they're withdrawing from representation and documenting everything. I pictured Linda's confident smile, her manila folder, her yellow sticky tabs. My voice stayed even. So, the lawyer is backing away. Tyler nodded, swallowing hard. And they called you in a panic, I said. He looked up sharply, like he realized the sentence matched something he'd heard before. Emily. I pushed off the counter. I need you to sit. He did, slowly, like his knees had finally gotten the message. I walked to the stairs and called up, Sophie, you can come down now. Sophie appeared at the top, pajama pants and a hoodie, hair half loose. She held the banister like it was an anchor. It's okay, I said. Come sit with me. She came down and sat beside me on the couch. Tyler stared at her like he didn't know what to say. Sophie didn't look at him. She looked at me. Are we safe? I nodded. Yes. The next scene came the following morning, Friday, when snow started falling in thick clumps and the city turned quiet in that way it only does when the weather demands respect. I dropped Sophie at school and came home to find Tyler already gone. Not to work. His car was gone too. On the kitchen table, he'd left the folder, open, like a dare. I didn't touch it with my bare hands this time. I took pictures of every page with my phone, slow and thorough, capturing signatures, dates, notary stamps. Then I slid it into a zip bag, sealed it, and put it in my file drawer beside Sophie's birth certificate. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. I'm at Mom's. We need to talk tonight. I typed back. We can talk here. Without her. A minute later. She's freaking out. You didn't have to do this. I stared at the screen, then typed, You did this. No more words. No more explaining. At noon, I got a call from Sophie's school. This is the front office, a woman said. Linda, your mother-in-law, came to pick Sophie up. She's not on the approved list. We didn't release her. My hand tightened around the phone. Thank you. Please don't, under any circumstances. The woman's voice stayed professional. She was upset. She said Tyler gave her permission. I'm Sophie's mother and legal guardian, I said. Not Tyler. Not Linda. There was a pause. Understood. We'll make a note. When I hung up, I didn't panic. I did something quieter. I drove to the school and updated the pickup list in person, adding a password phrase Sophie and I chose on the spot, 2 words that meant safety. Then I sat in my car and called Marisol. I need to document an attempted unauthorized school pickup, I said. Marisol didn't sound surprised. Email me the details. Keep it factual. Date, time, who said what. I did, from the parking lot, while my breath fogged the windshield. This was the second front I hadn't expected. Linda wasn't just after money. She was after access, the kind that makes you feel powerful. And she'd just shown me how far she'd go. That evening, Tyler came home alone. His face looked older, like stress had pressed down on him all day. He stood in the doorway and said, "Emily, can we not do this in front of Sophie?" I glanced toward the living room where Sophie was coloring quietly. "She already knows. You just haven't caught up." Tyler's shoulders dropped. "My mom said you're turning her into a weapon." Sophie's head lifted, eyes sharp. I said, "Sophie is a person." Tyler looked at Sophie finally. "Hey, Soph." Sophie didn't answer. Tyler swallowed. "Mom went to your school." I didn't widen my eyes. I didn't gasp. I just nodded. "Yes." Tyler's face tightened. "She said she was just trying to help." I walked to the drawer, pulled out the folder in the zip bag, and set it on the table between us. "This is what help looks like in your family." Tyler stared at it. "Emily." I held up my hand. "No, listen. Your mom attempted to remove my child from her school without permission. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a boundary violation." Tyler's voice cracked. "She didn't mean," I cut in. "Intent doesn't undo impact, and it doesn't undo patterns." Tyler sank into a chair. "The lawyer dropped her," he said quietly. "He said he can't be involved if there's fraud." I waited. Tyler looked up, eyes wet but not dramatic. "She forged something, Emily. I think she forged my name." The room went silent. Sophie's crayon paused. I said, "Did you know?" Tyler shook his head fast. "No, I swear. She told me it was routine." I nodded once. "That's what you told me." Tyler flinched like I'd slapped him with truth. I said, "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay somewhere else for now." Tyler's mouth fell open. "What?" I kept my voice low. "You can stay with your mom. Or a friend. But you're not sleeping here while you're still tied to her choices." Tyler's hands gripped the edge of the table. "Emily, please. It's Christmas." I looked at Sophie, then back at him. "That's exactly why." Tyler stood, paced once, then stopped like he'd hit an invisible wall. "If I leave, you'll tell everyone." "I'll tell the truth if I have to," I said. "But I'm not running a smear campaign. I'm protecting my kid." Tyler's eyes darted toward Sophie. She stared at him with a look that wasn't anger. It was disappointment. Too old for 9. He whispered, "I didn't think she'd go that far." I said, "You didn't think because thinking would have required you to stop her." Tyler's shoulders sagged. "Can I at least say goodbye?" I nodded. He walked to Sophie, crouched in front of her. "Hey," he said, voice soft. "I'm sorry." Sophie's lips pressed together. "Are you still on her side?" Tyler swallowed. I don't know how to do this." Sophie nodded like that was the answer. "Then you shouldn't be the one deciding stuff." Tyler's eyes closed for a second. He stood, grabbed a bag from the closet, and left without another argument. The next domino fell the day after, Saturday, when Linda texted me a message that tried to sound sweet. "Emily, honey, let's meet. We can fix this. Tyler is upset and you're overreacting. Bring Sophie to my house for Coco." I didn't respond. An hour later, she sent another. "You're keeping my granddaughter from me." I stared at the word granddaughter. Linda had never called Sophie that before. Not once. I typed one message, short and factual. "Do not contact Sophie directly. Do not come to her school. Communication goes through me." Then I muted her. By afternoon, the financial domino hit. Tyler's paycheck usually went into our joint account. That day, it didn't. Instead, I got an alert. Tyler had opened a new account and redirected his deposit. It wasn't clever. It was panic. He texted, "Mom says you'll freeze me out. I need to protect myself." I stared at the screen and felt nothing but clarity. I replied, "I'm not freezing you out. I'm separating what you already tried to take." Then I walked to my desk and opened every shared subscription. Streaming, cell plan, the family credit card Tyler insisted was easier. I didn't cancel to punish. I canceled to stop leakage. I left Tyler's phone line active for 7 days, just enough time to transfer, then set it to end. That evening, Tyler showed up at the door, eyes red, shoulders tight. "You canceled my card." I kept my voice steady. "I canceled access to my credit." Tyler's mouth opened, then he stopped. "Mom said you'd do this." I nodded. Mom is right about one thing. I'm done being used. He stared at me. "Where am I supposed to go?" I didn't soften. "That's for you to figure out. You had time to plan when you were planning behind my back." Tyler flinched. "Emily, I love you." I looked at him for a long second. Love doesn't sound like she'll sign what we need. Tyler's face crumpled. He looked past me into the house, where Sophie stood halfway down the stairs, watching. He whispered, "Can I talk to her?" I shook my head. "Not tonight." Tyler nodded slowly, like he knew he'd earned that. No, he walked away, shoulders hunched, and didn't slam the door. That was his smallest real step, accepting a boundary without breaking something. The next domino was family reputation, and it happened fast because Linda couldn't stand losing control quietly. Sunday morning, my phone lit up with messages from Tyler's aunt, his cousin, even his older brother. "Linda says you stole Tyler's money. Linda says you're keeping Sophie from her. Linda says you're mentally unstable." I didn't respond to any of them right away. I read them, took screenshots, and saved them in a folder labeled Facts. Then I wrote one message in the family group chat Tyler had added me to months ago, a chat I'd barely used because Linda dominated it with memes and guilt. I kept it short, factual, no emotions. "Hi, everyone. Linda attempted to remove Sophie from school on Friday without being authorized. Tyler and Linda brought paperwork to my home attempting to gain control of Sophie's trust. I met with an estate attorney and secured additional protections for Sophie. For safety, Linda is not permitted to contact Sophie directly or pick her up. Please do not relay messages to Sophie. Thanks." Then I put my phone down. Within minutes, Linda replied in all caps, "How dare you? You're lying." Then Tyler's aunt replied, "Linda, did you go to the school?" Silence. Then Tyler's cousin, "Why would you try to pick up a child you're not authorized to pick up?" More silence. Then Tyler's brother, "Mom, answer the question." Linda sent one more message. "You're all turning on me because of her." And that was the moment her power shifted. Not because I attacked her, because she had no calm facts to counter mine. By Monday, Tyler came to the house with a small gift bag and a nervous expression. He stood on the porch like a guest. "I brought Sophie something," he said. I didn't move aside. "Say what you need to say first." Tyler swallowed. "My mom told me to come here and get you to sign another thing. She said it'll fix it." "I told her no." I held his gaze. "You told her no." He nodded. "I did." I waited. Tyler took a breath. "And I told her she can't go near Sophie's school again." My throat tightened for half a second. Then I released it. "Okay." He looked down at the gift bag. "Can I give this to Sophie?" I stepped aside. 2 minutes. Living room only. Tyler nodded like he'd accept any terms if it meant a chance. Sophie came in, cautious, and Tyler handed her the bag. It was a small stuffed fox and a gift card to her favorite bookstore. Sophie looked up at him. "Did you tell Grandma she was wrong?" Tyler's eyes shone. "Yes." Sophie stared for a beat, then nodded once. "Okay." That was all she gave him. Not forgiveness, not warmth, just acknowledgement of a step. When Tyler left, he didn't ask for more. On Christmas Eve, Sophie and I started a new tradition on purpose. We drove through the north side to look at lights, got hot chocolate, and listened to a silly audiobook in the car. No big speeches, just safety wrapped in normal. When we got home, my phone buzzed once. A message from Linda, sent from a new number. "Merry Christmas. You can't keep him forever." I stared at it, then blocked the number. Sophie looked up from the couch. "Who was that?" I didn't lie. "Linda." Sophie's shoulders tightened. "What did she say?" I chose calm honesty. "She's unhappy she can't control things." Sophie nodded slowly, then went back to her book. That was the win. Not fireworks, not revenge, just a child returning to her own life. A week later, Tyler met me at a coffee shop to talk logistics. He looked exhausted, like someone who'd realized peace costs something. "I'm moving into a short-term rental," he said. "I'm going to therapy, and I signed something saying I won't pursue any claim to Sophie's trust." I raised my eyebrows. "You did that voluntarily?" He nodded. "Marisol sent it. I read it. I signed." I took a sip of coffee. "Okay." Tyler's eyes searched mine. "Do you think we can ever fix this?" I didn't rush to comfort him. "I don't know, but Sophie and I are safe now. That's the foundation. Everything else is optional." Tyler nodded, swallowing hard, and for the first time, he didn't argue with the word optional. When I picked Sophie up from school that afternoon, she ran to me with her backpack bouncing and said, "Mom, guess what? I got invited to the art club." I smiled. "That's amazing." She grabbed my hand. "Can we celebrate with pizza?" "We can," I said. "And we will." We walked to the car under a pale winter sun, and the world felt steady again. Not perfect, not painless, but ours. And I'll ask you one thing. If someone told you they didn't care about your child, would you wait for them to prove it twice, or would you do the quiet move the first time? Comment below and subscribe for more stories.
Hi, I've got a new story for you. In this one, we deal with really complicated relationships within a family and a character who needs to make a choice. Let's listen.
My mother-in-law slapped me across the face so hard I lost my balance and fell. Then she screamed, "You and that thing you call a child should know your place in that house." My 8-year-old heard everything. 3 hours later, they went pale because that house was actually... On the day my mother-in-law, Deborah, and my father-in-law, Dennis, moved into our large house, Deborah stood in the foyer like she was inspecting a hotel she had secretly purchased. My husband, Thomas, was at work. My daughter, Celia, was upstairs doing homework, and I was carrying a basket of towels past the staircase. "This is what a Harvard degree buys," Deborah said, touching the banister. Dennis gave a little laugh and said, "We did sacrifice quite a lot for him." They had arrived with 4 suitcases, 2 garment bags, and the phrase temporary financial difficulties, but they wore no embarrassment. Deborah corrected the angle of a vase, then looked at me as if I had placed it wrong on purpose. I said, "The guest room should have everything you need." She smiled without warmth. "For now." That was the first time she made my own hallway feel borrowed. I kept walking because Celia was in the house, and because I kept telling myself a temporary arrangement was not a life sentence. Then Deborah called after me, Rebecca, tomorrow we should discuss standards. Dennis added, Your generation does need guidance. She said it as if the house had hired her and forgotten to tell me. By the second morning, standards had become a moving target I was expected to chase. Deborah rejected the coffee mugs, opened every drawer, and moved Celia's glittery school calendar from the fridge to a laundry room shelf because, as she said, children's clutter doesn't belong in adult spaces. Celia saw the empty spot at breakfast and quietly asked, Where did my Mayflowers go? I reached for the calendar, but Deborah stepped in front of me with a dish towel folded over one arm. Grandma is helping the house look more proper. Dennis sat at the island, reading the financial pages on his tablet, and did not look up. He only murmured, Your mother has always had an eye. That tiny approval made Deborah stand taller. I put the calendar back on the fridge and said, Celia made it. It stays. Deborah stared at the crooked magnets like I had dropped crumbs on silk. She did not argue in front of Celia, which almost made it worse. She waited until my daughter left, then said, You let that child run the atmosphere here. Before lunch, Celia's sneakers had been moved from the mudroom bench to a box labeled miscellaneous. The label was in Deborah's neat, sharp handwriting. On the third afternoon, I came home from a grocery run and found the kitchen half emptied. Cabinet doors hung open, pantry boxes sat on the breakfast table, and Deborah was standing on a step stool, transferring spices into glass jars I had never seen before. What are you doing? I asked, setting the bags down hard enough for apples to roll. She didn't turn. Making this kitchen usable. Dennis was at the sink, rinsing my measuring cups like evidence. I saw a cardboard box marked donation, then a black trash bag by the back door. Something wooden stuck out of the top. I pulled it free and stopped. It was a small framed recipe my late father had carved around the edges, the last thing he made before the stroke took his hands. Celia had learned pancake batter from that recipe, standing on a stool. The varnish was dented, but I knew every mark. Deborah glanced down and said, Oh, that cheap trash. I threw it out. It made the whole kitchen look poor. My fingers closed around the frame. I did not yell. I set it on the counter between us. You moved into my house 3 days ago, I said. You don't get to throw away my things. Deborah climbed down slowly, as if my sentence had insulted her balance. Your things? She asked, and the air changed. Dennis dried his hands and stood beside her, not blocking me, just making a wall. His shoulder angled toward mine just enough to make the kitchen feel smaller. Nothing here is yours, Deborah said. This life exists because we paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for Thomas's Harvard degree. We did not do that so some poor nobody could command us around here. The words were calm, which made them land harder. I looked at Dennis, waiting for even one correction. He gave me that polite, superior expression he used when servers brought tap water. You should remember whose family took you in, he said. That did it. Not because it was the worst thing they had said, but because they were saying it over my father's ruined frame in the middle of my torn-apart kitchen. I picked up the spice jars and placed them back in their box. Deborah grabbed one. Don't be childish. I met her hand and moved the jar anyway. No, I said. This stops now. Deborah laughed once, short and bright. There it is. The scholarship girl learned a tone. Dennis smiled at that. I carried the donation box off the table and set it on the floor by my feet. You are guests, I said. Not owners, not inspectors, not my supervisors. Deborah's mouth tightened, but I kept going because the line had already been crossed. You do not move my kitchen, you do not throw away my father's things, and you do not erase Celia from rooms where she lives. Dennis sighed like I was making a scene at dinner. Celia is not the issue. She becomes the issue every time Deborah calls her clutter, I said. Deborah stepped closer. That girl is 8 years old and still treated like a princess in a house she was lucky to enter. I felt my voice drop. Do not talk about my daughter like she is a stain on your family. The back door clicked in the wind, and all three of us heard Celia's cartoon playing faintly upstairs. Then the cartoon clicked off. Deborah's face changed then. It was not anger exactly. It was offended authority, the kind people get when a door they thought was locked opens from the other side. You need to know your place, she said, and stop acting like you have power here. The slap came before I finished saying, my place is wherever my child is safe. Deborah's hand cracked across my face, and I lost my balance against the open dishwasher. My hip hit the tile first, then my shoulder, and for 1 second the kitchen went silent except for a fork sliding from the rack. Dennis said, Deborah, but not like she had done something wrong, more like she had gone off script. Deborah stood over me, breathing hard, and screamed, You and that thing you call a child should know your place in that house! I pushed up on one elbow and saw Celia in the doorway. My 8-year-old was holding her math workbook to her chest, frozen so completely that even her tears seemed stuck. Deborah turned and saw her too. Instead of shame, she lifted her chin. Dennis looked away first, which told me he understood and still planned to stay comfortable. My cheek burned, but Celia's face did more damage than Deborah's hand ever could. For once, I did not check Deborah's reaction first. I checked my child's breathing. I stood slowly, picked up my father's frame, and looked at my daughter. 3 hours later, both of them would go pale because the house was actually mine. Before Thomas, before that kitchen, before anyone called my daughter a thing, I was a young single mother measuring groceries in dollars and minutes. I had a bursary for graduate school, a part-time job at a campus office, and a mother who helped when her knees were not hurting too much from double shifts. Celia was 2 then, with curls that escaped every clip and a habit of falling asleep on my textbooks. At night, I worked through assignments at a cracked table while she slept in a thrift store toddler bed beside me. One Thursday, the electric bill came higher than expected, and I stood at the ATM deciding between the payment and a textbook. My mother called and said, "Buy the book. I'll bring soup." I bought a used copy with 3 highlighted chapters missing. That was how we lived. Not tragic, not glamorous, just tight. I kept a notebook of prices in my backpack because memory was too expensive to trust. Every choice touched another choice. When Celia needed new shoes, I took an extra Saturday shift filing forms for a professor who never learned my name. When people later called me lucky, I always remembered the ATM receipt. Luck had never packed Celia's lunch or paid the late fee when daycare closed at 6. I met Thomas in a university seminar room with broken blinds and a coffee machine that burned everything. I was in a master's program, and he was taking a part-time professional course while working in finance. He arrived late in a navy coat that probably cost more than my monthly food budget, apologized to everyone, then gave me the last clean mug without making a performance of it. After class, he asked if I wanted coffee somewhere with real cups. I said, "I have 20 minutes and a child pickup." He blinked, recalculated, and said, "Then the campus cart is perfect." That mattered. Men had treated Celia like a warning label before they knew her name. Thomas asked what she liked to eat, not whether her father was around. He bought a muffin and split it into a napkin for me to take to her. The muffin was $6. He did not notice. I noticed him not noticing. Then he said, I know I sound spoiled right now. That honesty kept me from walking away. His first question on our next walk was, "How is Celia's rocket project?" The next week, he brought up the rockets before he brought up himself. I did not let Thomas meet Celia for 3 months. He accepted the rule without sulking, which was the first test he passed. The second came when my sitter canceled before a statistics review, and I had to bring Celia with crayons and a plastic bag of pretzels. Thomas saw her under the seminar table drawing purple rockets. He crouched at a distance and said, "Permission to compliment the spacecraft?" Celia looked at me first. I nodded. "It has a bathroom," she told him. "Essential for space travel," he said seriously. He did not reach for her, did not ask for a hug, did not act wounded when she hid behind my chair. The next week, he brought a pack of star stickers and handed them to me, not to her, so I could decide. Months later, Celia saved him the green chair at her preschool concert. He sat in it like a man being handed a key. When she forgot one line and waved at me instead, he clapped softly, not loudly, because she hated loud rooms. Afterward, she fell asleep against his sleeve. It was the first time I saw him choose patience over charm and win. He whispered, "I don't want to be a visitor to this." Deborah and Dennis made it clear from the first dinner that they thought I was a visitor. Thomas took me to their country club because Deborah insisted family should meet properly, and she looked at my dress before she looked at my face. "Rebecca," she said, "Thomas tells us you are studying." Dennis asked what my father did, and when I said he had passed and had worked maintenance, his smile paused. Then Deborah asked where Celia was, not because she wanted to meet her, but because she wanted to count the complication out loud. "With my mother," I said. "How practical," she replied. Thomas's oldest brother, Christopher, a surgeon, arrived late and barely sat before discussing a foundation gala. His second brother, Philip, a private equity partner, called from London and spoke on speaker about a property deal. The comparison was not accidental. Deborah kept touching Thomas's shoulder whenever one of his brothers succeeded in the conversation. When the check came, Dennis waved it away before I could even reach for my purse. "This family takes care of things," he said. Deborah watched to see if I would thank him. On the drive home, Thomas said, "They'll come around." I looked out the window and knew they had already decided what I cost. For a while, Thomas's career seemed to justify every brag Deborah had ever made. He wore tailored suits, took early trains, and came home with numbers in his head that made him quiet at dinner. Then his firm signed off on a set of compliance reports tied to client funds, and the reports were wrong. Not a little wrong. People lost money, executives blamed each other, and Thomas's signature sat on a chain of approvals like a bright red mark. He had not stolen anything. He had not plotted anything. But he had trusted people above him, rushed documents below him, and carried responsibility on paper. Lawyers came first, then settlements, then a suspension that became a resignation. One night, he sat on our bathroom floor in his shirt sleeves, phone buzzing beside him, and said, "They're going to make me the face of it." I turned the ringer off. By morning, his work email was locked. His building badge was dead, and his name had become a warning whispered inside offices that used to welcome him. He spent 2 weeks answering calls from people who sounded sympathetic until they mentioned liability. Every conversation ended with him sitting a little farther from the person he had been. The day he asked me to keep it from his parents. Rain was hitting the kitchen window of our old apartment. Thomas had not shaved in 4 days, and the mail was stacked with envelopes from attorneys, lenders, and one very polite collection department. "Please," he said, sitting across from me with both hands flat on the table. "Do not tell them." I said. "They will find out something happened." "Not from us." His voice cracked on the last word. "They only respect success. Christopher saves lives. Philip moves money around the world. If they know I lost everything, I will be the cautionary tale at every Thanksgiving until they die." I wanted to say his parents were not worth that kind of fear. Instead, I saw the man who had learned to earn love like a bonus. Celia padded into the kitchen then, dragging her blanket, and Thomas wiped his face before she could notice. That small panic decided me faster than his pleading. "It is your truth," I said carefully. "But secrets collect interest." He nodded like he understood, but he was already asking me to pay the first installment. The next morning, Deborah called to ask about his promotion prospects, and I lied before my coffee cooled. After graduation, over the next several years, I took a steady job, then built a side business fixing operational messes for small companies that could not afford full departments. Schedules, vendors, facilities, safety protocols, access systems, boring things that saved owners money and stopped disasters before they became lawsuits. The business grew because I answered calls, wrote clean contracts, and did not panic when boilers broke at midnight. Eventually, it became my company, with employees, clients, and Marcus, a former corporate security manager who handled physical safety for our sites. Deborah had heard about my work, but she treated it like a little side project, something small and temporary that did not count beside Thomas's imagined success. I hired slowly, checked references myself, and learned that authority did not need a raised voice. Thomas started over in a school as an after-school aide, then a teaching assistant. The pay was small, but he came home lighter, carrying stories about kids who learned fractions because he explained pizza slices with paper plates. At home, he packed Celia's lunches and knew which hoodie she wore on test days. With Deborah, he still performed. If she asked about bonus season, he said, "Busy." If Dennis asked about markets, he changed the subject. They still believed he was consulting, investing, providing. Each lie sounded harmless alone. Together, they built a room none of us could breathe in. The house came after my company landed 2 long contracts, and my accountant told me I could stop renting around everyone else's instability. Thomas could not qualify for the mortgage. His credit was bruised, his legal bills had eaten the savings, and every bank saw the collapse before they saw the recovery. So the house was purchased in my name, with my down payment, my income, and my signature on every page. The loan officer congratulated both of us, and Thomas quietly corrected him. "She did this." Thomas stood beside me at closing and cried in the parking lot, not because he wanted ownership, but because he knew what I had carried. "I'll tell them soon," he said. He did not. Deborah saw photos and announced, "Thomas finally has a home worthy of him." Dennis told relatives their sacrifices had paid off. At holidays, they praised the staircase, the yard, the quiet street, all as evidence that their son had risen properly. I corrected no one because Thomas squeezed my hand under tables, and because peace sometimes looks cheaper than truth. It was not cheaper. By the time Deborah threw out my father's frame, she was humiliating me inside a house that belonged entirely to me. They had mistaken my silence for dependence, and Thomas's shame had let them decorate that mistake. After the slap, I did not answer Deborah from the floor. I moved toward Celia. She backed into the hallway as if she had done something wrong, and that broke through the ringing in my ear faster than pain. "Come with me," I said, keeping my voice level. Deborah started. "Do not walk away while I am—" But I did not look at her. I took Celia's hand and led her upstairs to her room, past the family photos Deborah had straightened that morning. Celia sat on the edge of her bed, still clutching the math workbook. "Am I that?" she whispered. I knelt in front of her. "No, you are Celia. You are my daughter. You are kind, funny, stubborn, and safe." Her mouth trembled. "Grandma hates me." I wiped one tear with my thumb. "What she said was cruel, wrong, and not true. Adults are responsible for their own cruelty." She looked at my cheek. "Are you safe?" I showed her how to lock the bedroom door from the inside, not because it would stop anyone determined, but because it gave her a sound of protection. "Yes," I said. "I'm going to handle this." She nodded once, then put her workbook in my lap like a shield. I placed it on her desk and stayed with her until her breathing slowed. For the next couple of hours, I did not give Deborah the confrontation she wanted. I sat with Celia, texted Thomas once, "Call me when you can, emergency." But the message sat unread while he was still supervising the after-school program, and listened to Deborah and Dennis downstairs moving through my kitchen as if noise could turn assault into housekeeping. When Celia finally let go of my sleeve, I told her to keep the door closed and call me if she heard anyone on the stairs. In the hall bathroom, I washed my face and saw the red mark had darkened across my cheek. My hands were steady, which surprised me, but only for a second. I had spent years handling emergencies that got worse when people performed panic. I took one photograph in the mirror, then another with better light. Then I called Marcus, the head of security at my company. He answered on the second ring. "Rebecca?" "I need you at my house," I said. "There has been violence. My mother-in-law slapped me, my daughter witnessed it, and they need to be removed from the property." He did not ask whether I was sure. "Are you and Celia away from them?" "Upstairs." "Stay there until I arrive. Do not touch them. Do not argue. Do you want police now?" I looked at Celia's closed door. Police meant flashing lights, questions, and a story my child would have to retell before she had even stopped shaking. "Not unless they refuse." "Understood. I'm 15 minutes out." I ended the call, changed into a clean shirt, and picked the frame back up from the hallway table. It was cracked, but not gone. I kept it with me until Marcus arrived, because proof did not always look official. Sometimes it looked like a broken piece of wood. By the time Marcus rang the bell, nearly 3 hours had passed since Deborah hit me. When Marcus rang the bell, I went downstairs with the frame in my hand. He did not storm in like a movie bodyguard. He rang the bell, waited for me to open it, and stepped inside with his hands visible and his voice even. Marcus was tall, gray at the temples, and better at silence than most people were at speeches. Deborah was still in the kitchen, repacking jars as if finishing the job proved she was right. Dennis stood near the coffee machine with his phone in his hand. I walked in behind Marcus and stopped by the doorway. "Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Whitmore," Marcus said, using their last name because he had asked me once, years ago, how formal I wanted difficult conversations. "I'm Marcus Hale. I'm head of security for Rebecca's company. She has asked me to escort you from the property." Deborah blinked. "Who are you supposed to be?" "I just told you, ma'am." She looked past him to me. "Rebecca's little business has a head of security now?" That was the first crack in the wall. Dennis heard it too, because his phone hand lowered. Marcus did not fill the silence. He simply said, "Please collect your belongings." The spoon in Deborah's hand tapped once against the counter. It was the first ordinary sound she did not control. Deborah recovered fast by choosing insult. "Head of security, she repeated, laughing through her nose. Please, she came from nothing. What are you really, her lover? Marcus did not react. No, ma'am. I am here in a professional capacity. Dennis stepped forward. You have no authority in my son's house. I felt the old pull to protect Thomas's secret, even then, even with my cheek burning. Deborah pointed at the boxes. She is being dramatic because I improved a few things. Marcus looked at the trash bag, the open cabinets, the broken frame in my hands, then back at them. You need to leave voluntarily. Dennis's face hardened. We are not going anywhere. Then Deborah opened her purse and pulled out a garage remote I had not given her. Dennis added, almost proudly, We also made a spare side door key. Families should not have to ask permission. That was the second front. Not just contempt. Access. Marcus turned slightly toward me and said, Codes change tonight. Remote gets collected now. I said, And the key? My stomach tightened, not with fear, but with logistics. Codes, locks, garage access, school pickups, all the little doors people use when they think family cancels consent. Deborah snapped, You will do no such thing! Marcus held out his hand for the remote, and Deborah clutched it like a passport. This is absurd, she said. Call Thomas. You can call whoever you want, Marcus replied. But the property does not belong to your son. For one clean second, nobody moved. Then Deborah laughed, but the sound had lost its balance. Of course it belongs to Thomas. She could never afford this. Dennis did not laugh. He was watching me now, calculating. Marcus said, The property belongs to Rebecca. Deborah's eyes shifted from him to me, then to the kitchen, as if the cabinets might correct him. The color went out of her face. Dennis went pale too, his calculations suddenly having nowhere to land. That is impossible. It is not, I said. My voice sounded strange to me, calm and far away. Every deed, mortgage document, insurance policy, and tax bill has my name on it. Deborah's mouth opened. No words came. Dennis whispered, Thomas would have told us. That was when I saw the real injury, not homelessness, not fear, but the loss of the story they liked. Marcus continued, You may leave now without further escalation. If you refuse, police can be called for trespass and for the assault Rebecca has documented. Deborah's fingers loosened on the remote. She looked toward the foyer, not at the door, but at the staircase she had admired as Thomas's trophy. They called Thomas anyway. Dennis put him on speaker before Thomas even finished saying hello. Your wife has brought some man into your house, Dennis said. He claims he works for her company and says we have to leave. Deborah leaned toward the phone. She is unstable, Thomas. She threw a tantrum over garbage, and now this stranger is threatening us. I stood still because the secret was in the room like a glass on the edge of a table. Thomas was still at the elementary school, finishing the after-school program. I could hear children in the background and a door closing as he stepped somewhere quiet. Rebecca? He asked. Are you okay? Deborah talked over him. Tell them this is nonsense. Thomas did not know about the slap yet. He knew enough from my silence. Dad, he said, put the phone where everyone can hear me. Dennis frowned but obeyed. Thomas took one breath. She is telling the truth. Deborah's face drained. What? The house is Rebecca's. Her company is real. If she told you to leave, then leave. The room went quiet enough to hear rain start against the windows. For the first time since they moved in, neither of them knew which script came next. Deborah found her voice by turning on him. After everything we did for you, You let this woman humiliate us? Thomas's reply came sharper than I expected. You humiliated yourselves. Dennis said, Son, be careful. No, Thomas said. You be careful. You are in my wife's house after disrespecting my wife and my stepdaughter. I stepped closer to the phone. Thomas, your mother slapped me. Celia saw it. The silence afterward was different, heavy, exact. Mom, he said, and his voice shook once before it hardened. Pack your bags. Deborah started crying then, but the tears came late and aimed at the phone. Marcus gave them 10 minutes. He collected the garage remote, watched Dennis hand over the spare key, and stood by the stairs while they dragged their suitcases down. Deborah kept looking around like the house owed her an apology. Rain had turned the front walk glossy by the time Marcus opened the door. At the threshold, she whispered, This is not over. I looked past her to the wet driveway. It is for tonight. When the door closed, my whole body became very calm. The decision had already moved past anger into policy. They were never coming back. They tried to rewrite the story before their rideshare reached the main road. Thomas showed me the messages later, not to upset me, but because hiding had already done enough damage. Deborah told relatives I had thrown 2 elderly parents into the rain. Dennis said I brought some man to threaten them. They told Christopher and Philip that I had manipulated Thomas financially because a woman like me could not own a house without trapping someone. I did not chase every lie. I changed the alarm code, disabled the garage access, and had a locksmith rekey the side door in case Dennis had made more than one copy. Then I photographed everything. The red mark on my cheek, the open cabinets, the trash bag, my father's cracked frame. Marcus sent a short incident summary for my records, factual and dry. Celia watched from the kitchen table while I put her flower calendar back on the fridge. Can they come in again? She asked. No, I said. Not without my permission, and they do not have it. That answer did more for her than any speech. The house got quieter because access had consequences. That night, Celia slept with her door open again, and I counted that as the first real win. The next morning, Thomas made the smallest brave choice he had avoided for years. He did not make a grand video or beg for a family meeting. He wrote one message to Deborah, Dennis, Christopher, and Philip, then read it to me before sending. He said the house was mine, bought with my money after I carried us through the collapse of his finance career. He said he had not been a successful finance man for years. He was a teaching assistant, training toward classroom work, and happier helping kids understand money than he had ever been moving it for people who scared him. Then he wrote, I hated that life. I hated the pressure and the pretending. I kept chasing your approval, and it nearly destroyed me. I'm not doing it anymore. He paused after reading the last lines. His thumb hovered over the screen, but he did not delete them. He hit send and set the phone face down. It buzzed almost immediately. He did not pick it up. Celia came in for cereal, and he looked at her without hiding. I'm sorry, he told her. She nodded, small, but listening. Over the next few weeks, the world Deborah and Dennis worshipped shrank fast. Their temporary financial difficulties stopped sounding temporary once no guest room waited behind them. They moved into a weekly rental near a highway, then a small apartment far from the clubs and dinner tables where they used to perform success. Friends stopped inviting them when the story became messy. Christopher refused to pay their bills, saying he could not have his reputation dragged into bad judgment. Philip sent one cold transfer for a deposit, then wrote that future help would require a budget and accountability, which was his way of saying no. The lesson they had taught their sons came back clean. Worth was money, and failure was embarrassing. In our house, Celia's drawings stayed on the fridge. My father's frame was repaired and hung beside the pantry, not hidden, not expensive, visible. Thomas still works at the school. I still lock the doors at night. Peace here is not loud. It is the sound of nobody asking my daughter to shrink. I do not celebrate what happened to Deborah and Dennis, but I will not soften the boundary that protected us. I think I protected my daughter the only way I could, but I want to know what you think. Would you have done the same thing, or would you have handled it differently? Let me know in the comments, and if you want more stories like this, subscribe to the channel.
A quick hello from the writer. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe and also check out my other channel where I narrate my stories myself. See you on the next one.